Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carrut Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look at the 1972 movie The Godfather. Now, The Godfather is an epic drama centered around the mob family between the spans of a decade, between 1945, during the end of World War II, and pretty much well up into the year 1955. The movie was based on a novel by Mario Puzo, who also co-wrote the film along with director Francis Ford Coppola. The stars of the movie are Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, Richard Castellano, James Caan, Robert Duvall, the late John Cazale, Al Lettieri, and a very young Diane Keaton and Talia Shire, amongst many other performers, because there's just so many of them. Now, let me tell you something here. You can't really criticize a film like The Godfather, especially from a younger type guy like me. Since its release in 1972, The Godfather has been highly praised by fans universally. It's extremely hard for a person who has never seen The Godfather without having high expectations, because millions of people, maybe more, have been talking about how wonderful this movie is, and there's no argument for me about that at all. But as a film critic who has seen the movie several times and has read the novel that it was based on by Mario Puzo, this movie really deserves the credibility it gets. It really is that special. Whereas me on IMDb, I actually rated this one a 10 out of 10. And very seldom do I ever give 10 out of 10s. I gave away a lot of 9 out of 10s because I always find a little tad of imperfections in the movie. There is no such thing as a perfect movie, and although this movie is a near perfect movie, of course there are flaws in this movie, but there's not so much. I mean, everything about this movie is just rich in texture, and everything about this movie was perfect, both performance-wise, technical-wise, and also it was also pretty good marketing-wise as well. The film is a gripping epic which indulges the viewer with plenty of unsuspecting twists and a plot that works in a myriad of dimensions. And the mobsters depicted here face many trials and tribulations that involve marriage, favors, family struggles, turncoats, tragic events, violence, and of course, rigor mortis. And one of the things about the characters here, unlike a lot of mob films where a lot of them are wooden, caricatured, almost cartoonish-like, nobody here looks superficial. Even though a lot of people could probably see Marlon Brando's Vito Corleone as kind of like the symbolic, head patriarch, mob kingpin. I guess that's how people would imagine what a mob kingpin would look like. He turns in a performance that was so stunning that it was almost unanimous that he took home the Best Leading Actor Oscar. It was just also a crying shame that Al Pacino did not get the Best Supporting Actor Oscar. But then again, he was on the most substantial amount of time, even more so than Vito. And no wonder why he didn't show up at the Oscars, because he felt he should have been in line for the Best Leading Actor as opposed to the Best Supporting Actor. And we can blame him, because he was on about 70% of the time compared to the other cast members. Vito Corleone, played by Marlon Brando, is the head patriarch and kingpin of his esteemed enterprise, and he is acquainted at his daughter's wedding, which is a special occurrence in Italian tradition, Sicilian in particular, where the father of the bride is to refrain from offering the groom any special favors. His representatives, showing their signs of respect towards the Don, are featured in the opening scenes, and are told their ways of personal address and greeting regimentations. The Don is to be treated with respect and dignity, a man who follows his own frame of mind to what is fair and will likely deny any means of avenge. As an example, if anyone is to fondle with his daughter by any grounds, by any means, usually often result in grounds for murder, but of course also as a part of Italian traditions, they can't really interfere too much in personal family affairs. Apparently, his daughter Connie was married to an abusive, dirty, conniving rat named Carlo, and even though many times he has begged for him to intervene, they just can't do it. And there are also numerous facets that indicate how not so respected Don Corleone is. So, he's not exactly the perfect guy that we all pass him out to be. Vito comes from the old school of mafia and can be labeled as a mustache Pete. In this new era of mafioso, we are discovered that drugs has been a key central figure to mafia families, and Vito, being an old school kind of guy, wants no part in any kind of drugs or narcotics, feeling that it is a violation towards his enterprise and his family values. I mean, he still relies on family values, and he thinks that drugs is a violation against it. For unlike his adversaries, he refuses to get involved with drugs or smuggling for that matter. This is much to the chagrin of other rival mob bosses in the state of New York. The violence here is described disturbingly as nothing personal, it's just business. The philosophy behind the organized crime is quite chilling, but also very convincing. The violence is creepily accepted, and sometimes it happens all of a sudden. It could be whether people deserved it, and also people have been killed to those who didn't deserve it. Suddenly the Corleone enterprise falls on its foundations, and it's up to the next generation to restore the family so it could be ranked as the top of the best of the mob families. After Vito gets shot by Salazzo, now it's kind of up to the family members to step up. Obviously, Sonny is not actually the apple to Vito's eyes, because he feels that he's too aggressive. Fredo, he's just kind of like weak and too meek and mild to fill in, even though he tries his best. Tom Hagen, he's just an adopted son, so he can't really go into it. So now it's up to his youngest son, Michael, to step up to fill in the family legacy, even though he just simply refuses to want to be a part of it. But since after the actions by Salazzo, it is time to end all fights. So that's when Michael intervenes. Of course, he had to take a refuge to Sicily after that, and was a near close victim of a car bomb that fortunately saved his life, but took the life away of his innocent wife. The cast actually features a myriad of talented performers, each playing their respective roles flawlessly. The top stars like Marlon Brando as Vito, James Caan as the hot-tempered Sonny, Al Pacino as the likable Michael. We have John Cazale as the middle-aged and somewhat vulnerable Fredo. We have Robert Duvall as mob attorney Tom Hagen, who actually was like, Vito was kind of like a mentor to him. Even though Tom Hagen does not have Italian extraction in him, he was accepted into the family as an adopted son because, they picked him up when he was homeless. So then he, eventually turned his life around and became a successful lawyer. We got Richard Castellano as their trusted client, Clemenza. We have Abe Vigoda as the not-so-well-trusted Salvatore Tessio. And Diane Keaton as Kay Adams are what I may have expected with these characters from Puzo's book to look like physically, without having to fall victim towards any certain kind of cliches. Even the smaller roles deserve some special credit. The performances were absolutely mesmerizing, and the characters in the film, they complement the characters from the novel, and it is mainly due to the physical structuring and the carefully planned interpretations that really make this movie a one-of-a-kind unique. The novel that this movie is based on by Mario Puzo also deserves a lot of praise itself. Even though the movie was, a fiction, there are a lot of features that are purely authentic that make every scene and every chapter to be real. So, I highly recommend you read the book and watch the movie because they're both very, very special. I guess people, when they think of mob bosses, they visualize a supreme don sitting in his chair with a long facial expression, contemplating with the endless level-headedness of leadership. And The Godfather is a marvel from both the film and the novel, and it is hard to determine what medium is the better of the two because they're both very, very special. And if you've never seen it, well, hey, there's plenty of time. If you can go to iChapters, you probably might be able to peruse through the pages of Puzo's novel, and I'm telling you, you will be hypnotized. This movie can definitely define one of these movies you have to see before you die. Now, look, I'm 37 years old. I'm not ready to die anytime soon. I'm in very good health. But, this is one of those movies that you really should see if you really are a die-hard movie fan. If there's one thing that the book usurps from the novel is a little bit of some character development, which is kind of understanding because, hey, we have to cram 3 hours in. If they took every single detail and every single idiosyncrasy from a novel, then this movie would probably end up being 5 hours long. Might as well just make it into a extravagant epic miniseries, if that's the case. But I digress. The character development was a little bit better in the book than it was in the movie. Al Pacino's Michael Corleone is a more prominent character in the movie than in the novel. And Michael's transformation in the movie is at times a little bit rushed, while in the book it's handled more progressively. But still, it is very effective. And, it just goes to show you that although one's ambitions might be said, and one's dismissiveness might be easier said, but one can't help but when it comes to family concerns and family issues, then you have no other choice but to drop the gloves, and that's kind of like what Michael Corleone truly represents. Some other characters that are a little bit underdeveloped in the movie was the character Luca Brasi, played by Lenny Montana, who was actually used to be a former wrestler. He was a more vital character in the novel, which, while he was an ally to the Corleone clan, he was actually marked as a threatening adversary with a dark and dreary secret. In the movie, he kind of comes across as a big oaf, and he's not as scary as we think. It's nice that, some of the smaller characters from the novel have engaging backstories, particularly Captain McCluskey, played by Sterling Hayden, and that's good for the novel's sake, while the film would result in overdone detailing. So overall, The Godfather is one of the greatest movies ever made, thanks mainly to the crew for creating a well-structured setting that complements nicely to the characters, and thank you very